I really don't like Tennessee, man. I can't stress that enough, man. And they losers, they sore losers because they're not Alabama, and I hate Tennessee, man.
That was beautiful, man. Probably the best interview I've done all year. Thank you, man.
True, man. I can't stress that enough. I hate them boys.
This is the Houndstooth Podcast. Real talk from real fans. We gump to a standard around here. Recapping the Alabama Crimson Tide and college football from around the SEC and across the nation. This is the Houndstooth Podcast. And here are your hosts, Bill Sylvie, Jessica Brand, John Henry, and Bo Ganora.
Good morning, sports fans, and what a morning to be an Alabama sports fan, ladies and gentlemen. The Crimson Tide have defeated the hated Viles of Tennessee, and I gotta tell you, last night was an emotional roller coaster. It was quite the show. The first and third quarters were not pretty Alabama football, but we got the job done, ladies and gentlemen, and I think probably the most telling and entertaining responses actually came from our friends over at Reddit, some of whom said, "What the hell happened? I stepped away for a minute and it was a one-touchdown football game, and now it's a 28-point beatdown. What happened?" So that was pretty entertaining. So let me just share my opening thoughts. The game on paper, and we're going to see this as we go into it. The game on paper was not as bad for Alabama as it may have seemed. We'll talk numbers in a little bit, but let me just lead with that. The game on paper was not as bad as it was on TV. So, I just feel like it seemed a little schizophrenic at times. It seemed a little all over the roadmap. I think we're still looking for an identity as a team. And it showed in the play, but at the end of the night, it wasn't a squeaker. We didn't survive. We didn't, just get by. We played dominant Alabama Crimson Tide football, and I am pleased, if not elated, with the outcome. So, before we get to the numbers and everything like that, I'm going to stop babbling. I am going to mention that you're not seeing things. Bo is out today. He's off having fun in a campground, so we'll see you back next week, Bo. So I'm going to send it over to John Henry.
Good morning and roll tide. You know what? I kind of want to be at a campground. One of the campgrounds that you have inside where they bring food to you. Oh, I want to be in a hotel somewhere. That's what I want. Yeah, that's it. That's what
luxury glamping.
Yeah. And by the way, my 4-year-old came home from school one day and said that she had done glamping. She was telling us a whole story about glamping. And my wife and I looked at each other and like, did you give her that word? I didn't give her that word. So she's picked up glamping somewhere.
Lovely.
I could tell you a million stories about her, but let's talk about football. That's what we're here for.
That's right.
I'll tell you what, the defense, except for about 4 plays, was absolutely dominant. In those 4 plays, they weren't dominant, but the rest of the game, we allowed something like 64 yards rushing.
Yes.
It was, they couldn't find room to run, and passing was really pretty good, except for like 4 plays, and 4 plays where they were just running loose in the secondary. We get that one fixed. Those four fixed. We're doing okay. Uh, the offense was dominant in spurts, and in spurts they weren't. Uh, there's uh, how can I explain it? The offense was sloppy, and they were a little bit out of sorts. I think that had a little bit to do with some things that Tennessee was doing up front. The offensive line, and work with me, guys. This is not the offensive line's fault here for the most part. They did have some troubles, not as they weren't as bad as it seemed during the game. Um, Young was holding onto the ball a little bit too much, and maybe they were having trouble getting loose in the secondary. I couldn't tell unless I got to see the all 22, but he was holding the ball longer, and that made the offensive line seem like it was doing a worse job.
Shades of Jalen Hurts.
A little bit, yeah. That may have something to do with what he was seeing down the field, but yeah, he was holding on to the ball a little bit. Now, he had 2 rushing touchdowns. I was very pleased with that because they were trying. I think they were trying to force him to run, and he did finally. And I was very pleased to see him take the ball downfield when he needed to. So hope he rests his legs this week, because I think we're going to need him running a little bit more down the stretch. Yeah, that was the most frustrating blowout win that I can remember in quite some time. Strange game, but enjoyed the win, enjoyed the cigar.
Right on. Jessica, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So what's your initial reflections?
They're kind of mixed. I saw 2 guys early on. Keywords gonna be early on that I've been battering pretty hard about. Chris Owens at right tackle, Daniel Wright at free safety, having good days early on. Wright was interesting though, because they brought him a lot in sub packages, and they brought him up to the line where he was pretty decent at some secondary blitzes. He had some concerns. He didn't communicate well with Battle again. But Edgar being replaced with Latham at the end of the game sticks out to me as something that was a really strong initial impression on the not the kneel down drive, but the penultimate drive. That was interesting, certainly. I felt like there was a lot of good play. I felt like beyond the first quarter, there was a lot of dominant play. Josh Joby got burned because of an up-tempo play that he wasn't really expecting, and we're really not going to be facing any up-tempo teams going forward like that. I was very encouraged defensively about what I saw. Offensively, there were some odd hiccups, certainly. There's a lot of the trend going on right now about red flags. I mean, the red flags went up. I feel like some of that might be the case. Like, it feels like there's some real concerns to me about really penalties with this team right now. You had roughing the punter on 4th and 23. Two delay of game issues, 1 forced a timeout, fumbling inside the red zone, with Jameson Williams having kind of a rough day, drop passes, the block punt, false starts at home. It's stuff like this. The score was a lot closer than the box would indicate. I feel like if this was done against a better team, you really could not afford to do all of these different things. Bryce Young has wheels, though. Bryce Young is willing to run. He had 11-yard run, 12-yard run, 16-yard run. Saban said it himself that he'd rather not have him run, but he is selective. But I think that goes into what Gurley was saying. This was what he was seeing downfield, and that was born more of necessity than stupidity. I just worry about him getting hurt. Not because he's being careless about it, but just because he's getting too many hits. I know his idol is Aaron Rodgers, but you have to sometimes take the coverage sack. That was a problem I saw with Tua. It was not a problem I saw too much with Hurts because he would just outrun you and you would get the loss anyway. Mac didn't have to worry about it because the line was that good. He only got sacked 8 times last year, I think.
Yeah.
But third down was the story of the game. Tennessee started 2 for 3. And I'm like, oh boy, here comes the narrative again about Golden. But no, they finished 2 for 12. So that means they finished 0 for 9 on their last 9 third down attempts. That is just incredible. And I love it. Like, Alabama faced 33 first downs, Tennessee had 10. They only got 2.5 yards a carry because they dared Booker to beat them. For a team that was sixth in the country going into this game in total rushing yards per game, absolutely dominated them. I think this can beat any team, but from what I saw, I'm not sure if they will necessarily beat every team. I mean, granted, injuries are going to get better, but I think this is just an incomplete team right now. It has some really great points, but it has some really glaring red flags. So let's wave them until now and let them be crimson.
Right on. And we're going to take a look at some numbers here in just a second. But I do want to mention the trivia shout-out this week. The trivia shout-out this week goes once again to Commandant Krieger. Commandant Krieger, who got our trivia question right. And last week's trivia question was one of the 2 Alabama players to get multiple interceptions against Mississippi State in a game prior to last week's Mississippi State game. And that was Robert Lester. Robert Lester. And he got that. So good on you for your Bama sports, Bama football IQ there. Anyway, so let's go ahead and look at some numbers. So last night, Bryce was 31 for 43, 371 yards. Ice that shoulder today, Bryce. Averaging 8.6, QBR of 90. Rushing looked pretty good. We were B-Rob, 26 carries, 107 yards, averaging 4.1, three touchdowns, long of 15. Bryce Young himself, 10 carries, 42, average of 4.2, 2 touchdowns, with a long of 16. Roydell Williams, 8 for 29, averaging 3.6, with a long of 9. Trey Sanders, 3 for 19, averaging 6.3, long of 11. And Mechie, 1 for 8, long of 8. Receiving core. A lot of people, and I saw this in the Discord chat, good morning Discord, a lot of people were like, bench Williams, too many drops from Williams. But he was 6 for 123. He was our top receiver last night. Like I said, on paper, the game is better than it looked on the screen. Averaging 20.5 with a long of 65. Mechie, 11 for 121, averaging 11. 2 touchdowns with a long of 28. Latu, 3 for 55, average 18.3, long of 27. Holden, that's Holden with an H, not Bolden with a B. Holden with an H. 2 for 34, average 17, long of 26. Slade, 3 for 16, averaging 5.3 with a long of 7. Slade's our good check down go-to guy, more of a blocking receiver, really. He's an extra lineman, I think. B-Rob, 4 for 16, long of 17. Jaleel Billingsley, 1 for 8, long of 8. And Roydell Williams took a backwards pass for -2 yards. Fumbles, Jamison Williams, the less said about that, the better. I think Williams is going to be carrying a football around campus for the next 2 weeks. Bryce did drop that one crossing the line, but he fell right on top of it, so it's all good. And I'm not going to steep into the mindset of the garbage workers convention, folks. But looking back at comments on that, there were people like, how is that a touchdown? He dropped the ball. You numpties. I know you want to win, but you don't you don't get to say, hey, let's contravene all the rules of the sport just because we don't like the other team anyway. So defense looked good. Will Anderson he got in on 1.5 sacks, 1.5 tackles for losses. It was nice to see Toto getting work against his previous team. But in the overall, we had 3 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss on defense. And, of course, Jalen Armour Davis was really the guy who flipped the switch from victory to rout. I think that was a huge morale thing for the Tide. I think it just kind of, like I said, I feel like it flipped a switch. He had one glorious pick, 47-yard run back on that. Slade had but a single kick run back for 10 yards. Will Reichert was 1 for 2. I cannot hold anything against Will for not making the first field goal. He shouldn't have been in that position. That lays on the offense. He should not have been in that position to have to try and kick a 54-yard field goal attempt or whatever it was. And, of course, Burnett had a couple of punts. Did just fine, 85 yards, average 42.5 with a long of 46.
Yeah,
So,
except for that one little block, but that really wasn't his fault. That was the line.
yeah. So, yeah, I'm not, again, our kickers were fine. It was everybody else. So that's the tale of the tape. I feel like I said, on paper the game is better than it looked, because here's the thing, and I'm not going to dive too deep into the Vols numbers, unless there's just this groundswell in the comments from people wanting to hear that. Tennessee had, 368 yards, 370 yards, something like that. Let's see, total yards, 346 yards. 166 was on 3 passes. You take away 3 blown assignments, and Tennessee is literally not in the game offensively.
Yeah.
3 blown assignments, and Tennessee is not in the game. Tennessee is playing at like high school football level, but for 3 blown assignments. We shot ourselves in the foot. Tennessee wasn't that good, and to be honest, we weren't that bad. We weren't that bad. I'm not saying that, that we were perfect and that, those were mere aberrations that never happen and will never happen. But for 3 blown assignments, Tennessee does diddly over squat.
Take away those 3 blown assignments, and then take away the block punt, and they're shut out.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how that's how big those little mistakes are, from shutout to 24 points.
I said the same thing about A&M last year. A&M was not 24 points good against us last year. A tipped pass and a blown tackle. I mean, I thought that tightrope run, and we all know the play I'm talking about, I thought he stepped out. He didn't. And that goes back to my absolute loathing of bump tackles. Bump tackling is cancer. Wrap your arms around a guy and drag him to the friggin' turf. So yeah, you take away a couple little things. It's not like they just came out and dominantly played and picked exact plays to score on us with, and then laid down for the rest of the game. If they were badasses that were kicking our butts up and down the field all night long, they would have won, and they didn't. All right? It was mistakes on our side of the ball. I'm sorry, Volunteers fans. If you're a Tennessee fan and you're like, oh, well, the Houndstooth podcast, this is sure to be circumspect and be even-handed. No, you guys are not that good. You're good, but you're not that good. So that's my little Colin Coward-esque rant. Except it's pro-Alabama, not anti-Alabama, like Coward always is. So let's talk about high tide, low tide, and elephant stomp moments. For me, the high tide had to be, and I know it's going to sound strange. It's going to sound strange because we want our quarterback to be throwing. We want our quarterback to have plenty of time in the pocket and go through his progressions. But seeing Bryce not stuck to the ground and getting leg work and getting touchdowns doing it. All right. Now, I made a comment that he looked kind of Jalen Hurts-esque. But, and this is important, Jalen, and I don't get me wrong, I really liked the guy. I thought he was a great quarterback for us. I mean, there's a whole huge drama, and I mean that in a positive way, of how he stayed at Alabama, the relationship with him and Tua, the relationship with him and Saban. But Jalen would go through his progressions like this. No, run. I mean, you could see Mac stand in the pocket and literally, like, with his hand go, no, you come over here, no, all right, now I'll throw. Bryce is much the same way. It's just that he didn't have time. The O-line was not giving him time. And the coverage was such that he did not have the receivers open. So he would go through his progressions better than Jalen would, and only give up and dip out when it was obvious that things, maybe going through even twice, things were not developing downfield like he'd like. So yeah, that my high tide was seeing Bryce not take sack after sack after sack. Low tide, God, it's got to be the fumble. It's got to be the fumble. I mean, that was 7 points, and just he just threw the ball on the ground. It was so, I was so disgusted. It's like my knee-jerk reaction was shut the TV off. I hate to say it like that. My knee-jerk reaction was to just was to just shut the TV off. I turned it right back on. Right, I didn't nope out at that point, but I just it was not pleasant. Williams, you're gonna have to carry a football around all week, bud.
I did a literal face palm. I have to admit that. I just a face right down in the hand, and I understand. Elephant stomp, Jalen Armour Davis, you beautiful, beautiful man. That, go back, guys, and watch the instant replay on that pick. He literally stands out there and stares down the QB because he knows as soon as he sees the Tennessee back turn in that the ball is coming to him.
He's got to see that the quarterback is looking out when the receiver turns in, and he's going to be there. I haven't seen that kind of hunter-killer look since the 2015 semi against Michigan State, when Michigan was driving at the end of the first half, and there was a pick. Again, you know if you know the play, you know the play. You know you know what I'm talking about. Just watching a back stare down a QB and know that the ball is coming to him, and just like I'm going to catch this. He's going to throw the ball to me. I'm just going to stand out here and catch it like I'm a receiver. And I haven't seen a quarterback completely blow a throw like that since the 2011 LSU game in the shovel pass, which again, I know you guys know the play I'm talking about. I mean, it was that nice. That's my elephant stomp. So, how about you guys?
I mean, I'd start with low tide. Josh Jobe just getting lost in the sun. I realize that's not a play he's used to. I realize that's not a play he's going to have to worry about for the future. But man, he could have gotten a toaster with how badly he got burned with that. Oh my god! That was concerning. Certainly a lot of good moments. I think, and this is the one I'll highlight a little bit later. The initial third down stop to really set a tone about what the claims were going to be in terms of run defense. Just a wonderful job penetration. The initial one right out of the gate with, I believe, around 14 minutes, 15 seconds, probably a little bit more than that on the clock. Just a great run stuff. An elephant stomp to me is interesting. I think it's a Jameson Williams very long catch and run that arguably could have been a touchdown had he not been held. But what I noticed from that point on, Alabama played with a bit of swagger, a lot more confidence in the line. The defense really started to pick it up then. And granted, maybe it's because Tennessee really run its game of plays that really were meant to be exceptional. But I saw a very different team after that point. There was a lot more confidence all the way around, and it was really refreshing to see. And it's something if I wonder continues into the LSU game, because maybe it's not necessarily the play, the result, or anything like that. But if everyone feels a lot more confident within themselves, this is a team that I think has suffered because I don't think it's communicated well. That is massive beyond that one individual play. Like, I don't know why that was a turning point, but maybe it's because they were finally able to connect after there have been like 3 misses after 20 yards by depth of target down the field before that one. It was nice to have that finally unlocked. And it even spread over to the defense too, which was really surprising to me. But I'm keeping an eye on that play as maybe as something we're going for to look as really a demarcation point. Putting the American flag in the moon type moment.
Right on.
I'll tell you what. I saw a defense that, and this is my elephant stomp. The defense was great in the second half. I mean, fantastic, except for the one play. And really, the defense was great except for about 4 plays the whole game. And my elephant stomp moment is a defensive moment. After that blocked punt in the third quarter, they had the ball. I mean, they could have taken the momentum and tied the game, and it would have been a really, really tough game from there on out. But the defense held them. Well, they gained on one play and then lost on the next 2. So they basically had net 0 yards on that 3-play drive, and they had to kick a field goal. After that, we had them. That was my elephant stomp moment. My low tide moment is the fact that we had 3 defensive busts in the first half that led to 2 touchdowns. We had them stopped the whole game except for those plays. And it was just communication and mental lining up in the wrong place. Who you got, this is who I got moments. And it was silly stuff that I hope we get corrected. They got to get that worked out. But other than those, I mean, that was the low tide moment. My high tide moment, Young's second rushing touchdown. Yes, he had 2 rushing touchdowns. And that second one, I mean, if you've got a quarterback that's is gonna take off and run on you, and you can't really stop that, he's just gonna do that. Look, make a tough cut, and your lineman can't get to him, and he's gonna gain yards. That's as a former defensive lineman, that is a dispiriting thing, where you go back and you get to where he's supposed to be, and he's not there anymore, and you realize that all that work you're doing is for nothing. That's a morale buster. So that, and then Young finally hooking up with Williams long distance. They had been missing a lot of passes over 20 yards, and he finally hooked up with him, and that kind of broke the game open offensively. I think Tennessee had to loosen up. They could do some of the things that they were trying to do, and that allowed the offense to finally start working better. So that's what I got. It was the most frustrating good game I've been through in a while. I don't know how to explain it. I have to admit this. I was watching with an Auburn guy, and I was at one point during the game. I looked down at some of the chats, and some guys were melting down. We were up by a touchdown at the time, and we were just melting down. And I just kind of did this little chuckle, and he looked over at me and grinned and said, "You Alabama people are so spoiled. We have to deal with Bo." So I'm like, yeah, we are. We admit it. It's true.
Yeah. Well, before we get to halftime, I want to give a special mention to the SEC refs. Thank you for the first time all damn season for not ref balling us. See, isn't it more fun when a team of 11 plays against another team of 11 and not 11 guys against 16? So thank you, refs, for not ref balling us. I didn't see egregious ref balling going on in our game last night. Now, around the country, I can't really speak for that, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But yeah, we didn't get ref balled last night, and I appreciated it greatly. At least I didn't see anything egregious going on from the Zebras. So, and if you're listening in from the UK, Zebras. But that was also pleasing to see. So it is halftime, ladies and gentlemen. Time to stretch your legs, get a cold snack, relax a little bit, kick back, and let's talk trivia. As I said, last week's trivia winner, once again, Commandant Krieger. So good on you, Commandant. And this week, we have a trivia question. Now, as we all know, the University of Tennessee has not beaten the Alabama Crimson Tide since the creation of the iPhone, the invention of Twitter. Anyone born at the time that Alabama started this streak can now get their learner's permit. At this rate, this streak will be able to vote, drink, and join the military before any of this changes, and hopefully it will remain forever. But to move on, we have had other streaks of beating Tennessee about the head and shoulders, and God, they've been great. Prior to this, what was the longest streak? When did it start? And when did it end? By years. What is the longest winning streak prior to the arrival of Nick Saban as head coach? So there's your trivia question. What was the longest streak, number of years, starting year, ending year? And that's your halftime trivia question. As we now... I'm sorry, did you have something, John?
I just wanted to add that I would like to see this streak qualify for Social Security, personally.
As would we all. As would we all. But we now turn the mic over to Jess for her no kisses, no hugs defensive breakdown. Not the kind of defensive breakdown that lead to blown coverage, but you know what I'm saying. Jazz?
Yeah. So today we're going to look at, as I mentioned during the high tide, low tide, the 3rd-and-1 situation that Tennessee faced with 14 and change left on the clock. And what Alabama does is they have a very interesting look here. So on the front, they have 4 down linemen. Then they have 4. Looks like they're playing 4 linebackers. They play 1-on-1 with the receivers, and then they have 1. I hesitate to say up top, but relatively up top. And the reason you're going to call that kind of play is because you're accounting for the receivers just in case there's a little pitch off to the side, or if they try to hot it up the middle with like a slant or something like that. But they were pretty much assured in coming in for the run defense because they knew that's what it was, a short yardage situation, and the fact that it's Tennessee's bread and butter. So, first thing I noticed when I look at this play immediately is Will Anderson is lined up as edge. And he essentially is unprotected because it is a larger front than Alabama usually runs. Usually they'll run a 3-4. But essentially, we kind of ran it like a 4x4, which is kind of close to what what Ole Miss, Mississippi, whatever you call them, runs. They do a 3x3 by 3x2. This was more like a little bit more heavy up front than that because, again, we wanted to account for either of the runners because I believe they were in a 2-21 personnel, which means they had 2 running backs, 1 tight end. And both were lined up to the weak side. So the thought was, though, that might have been a little bit of a disguise. One of them was a little bit shaky to the right, so we loaded up to the right. And that's interesting to me. And I'm on to Madden. So they motioned it back to the right, and that indicated that we had guessed correctly. So right now, at that point, you have their offensive line with the running back shaded just a little bit to the right, to the strong side at that point. So from there, what do we have? We have Bill Anderson again. He's covering the running back. But at that point, he's shifting left. Anderson fights forward. Basically, the right side of the line essentially gets mauled. And Byron Young absolutely just cleans up the rest of the mess at that point. Just completely destroyed the right-hand side of their line, even though they wound up going left. The thing is, though, they were shaded left, so that way if they were going to go right, then they could have just gone with where their positioning was. But because they were facing left, they kind of had contrary looks. So the left side of the defensive line was shaded right, but then the right side of the defensive line, from their perspective, was shaded left. And it's almost like a reverse wham play like that. Like, again, they were sung out entirely for the run. They were accounting for every possible direction, every part of misdirection. And once again, Will Anderson led the charge on this. He was not one of the ones who wound up making the tackle, but he allowed the penetration to come through and come loose for Mathis and Young. And it was just a beautiful thing. I mean, I can't say enough about how good the third down calls are. There's the quote about, oh, no, not third and goal. Well, the thing is, though, when I'm looking at a lot of these plays, they are incredibly consistently well called. They are exactly matching what you need to call against an opposing offense. And consistently, they wind up working out. And that was really on display last night. And I think it was a very good forbearance, very good omen of what was to come. Because their offensive line, I don't think, was terribly good. Booker is making some pretty unreal throws. Booker is a really good kid. And I thought we had their way really, at least with the offensive lines. The defensive lines, I think, had a really good night last night for both teams. But this was just the first example of just dominating, getting in your face, saying that you can't really run on us. You're going to have to throw with the guy who's hurt. And it really set the tone for the pace for the rest of the game. Not only results, but game flow and game script.
And let me ask you, just to kind of take a 5,000-foot view, Jess, what do you think of Mr. Anderson and his leadership on this defense? Last night, it seemed like they were a little loosey-goosey, like maybe some bolts didn't need or needed to be tightened down, rather. But maybe he gave him a bit of a pep talk at some point because there was a there was a juncture at which just everything just seemed to click together. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, I noticed that there's a lot more tightness, a lot more sense of communication and unity, less battle and talking past each other like a divorced couple at the marriage counselor. I mean, my gosh. But like, I think what's really interesting to me is where this team's strength lies. Because if you told me prior to the year that the front seven would be really solid as it is and the secondary would have questions from the safeties and not from the corners, I would have been really confused because Alums came out strong last year. Battle, I thought was at least the first round pick going into this year. But I think Anderson's leadership is really contagious across really the front seven and what they try to do in terms of pressuring and penetration. I mean, it kind of reminds me about the mentality that the Purple People leaders used to have for the Minnesota Vikings back in the 70s.
Yeah.
They would used to say, meet at the quarterback. That was their old slogan within the team. And it kind of reminds me about that. Anderson is really good at leading his groups. And this is not a fault of Will Anderson. Will Anderson is incredible. Like, this guy is a force. Like, I imagine it's like when watching Derek Thomas was back in the 80s. But, like, he doesn't have as much control within the secondary group. Somebody has to really step up there and control that group. Because let's be honest, no one wants to see Will Anderson in coverage. I don't want to see him play Tampa too. No thanks. But, like, the secondary does not have leadership. I don't know where that needs to come from, but it needs to come from somebody. Josh Jobe seems like he'd be my type of guy that I'd want to lead because he's got a fiery personality, very physical, very energetic, could lead you right up the tunnel like that. But I think he's a great leader, but there's only so much you can really ask him to do. Like, honestly, like, unlike offense where a lot of the pieces are clicking, because, you know, sometimes you have a wide receiver back block for a back. Sometimes you have a back block for another back. The pieces don't always connect on the defense like this as they do on offense. And sometimes you're going to have that disconnect like this when it comes to leadership, in my opinion. Granted, you know, sometimes you have to have good push to ensure passes and get to the secondary, but sometimes a quarterback has just that quick of a release. So, great leader. I guess what someone from the secondary would follow suit and ensure that's ensured on all levels of the field.
Can we take a moment to appreciate the fact that an outside linebacker led the team in tackles?
Incredible.
He is absolutely dominant.
I mean, this guy is insane, though. Like, I've never seen anything like this. Like, he consistently wins battles, and he's often double teamed too. Like, this guy's not doing a one-on-one against weak opponents. He's getting the best that everyone throws at him and a little bit more.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm really waiting for our other outside linebacker to get back off of from his injury, because that'll take a little pressure off him. I mean, when's the last time he actually faced one blocker?
Yeah, really. Probably early Miami.
And he's still dominating.
Everything. Yeah.
He is. I mean, he's going to be an all-time great before it's over with.
Oh my gosh, I
love
can't
watching him play.
He does more. He's so fun too, and he gets everyone very excited around him to do their job. Like, as soon as he realizes that they've won, like, you look at what he does on the third down play that I'm highlighting. You see Young and Mathis celebrate immediately, and then what do you see immediately? You see Anderson come over and celebrate right with them right after, because he realizes that everyone did their job, and it's time to notate them and give credit where it's due. Like, this guy is a leader. He's incredibly skilled, and he's very humble about it, too.
Yeah, he's the guy we need there right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, you know, on the offensive side, I think Bryce is a great leader. Defense, you know, Will Anderson. If their teammates will listen consistently, there is nothing we cannot accomplish, and we will romp through the rest of this season. Yes, that includes the Iron Bowl. Yes, that includes the SECCG, and there's no reason with their leadership that we cannot get to the playoffs. So, yeah, I love seeing Anderson come in and play Stephen Lacey says the Matrix for Heisman. Well, we might have to have a shared Heisman. Slice the trophy, and half goes to Bryce and half goes to Anderson. But we'll see about that. So, good game defensively all around, though. I don't think there's any taking that away except for 3 blown coverages. So, stepping back, let's take a look at the SEC yesterday. It was kind of a quiet day, wouldn't you say, John?
I'd say so, and we'll start from the top. Well, after Alabama.
After Alabama.
So Ole Miss and LSU. LSU started off; they scored on their first possession. Then they promptly forgot that they had to play the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And Ole Miss came back, and it was 31-7 late until LSU made it a little respectable toward the end. Ole Miss, Matt Corral was 18 of 23 for 185 yards and a touchdown, but they had 295 yards rushing, something like that. It was Lane Kiffin's got a running team. The last time Lane Kiffin had a team that could run the ball that well, really good things happened for the team that he was coaching. Ole Miss is good. Ole Miss is good. Their defense could use some work, but Ole Miss they're a dangerous team. I'm glad we got them when we got them, because I think going forward they're going to be really hard to stop.
Yeah, Ole Miss is barreling downhill and picking up some speed, and LSU, I take a lap. All right, I'm sorry. This is just this is just ain't your year, LSU.
LSU may be up for the Alabama game. If they're in a dangerous spot, they are getting ready to pack it in, and you can tell.
Yeah,
LSU's got a lot of quit in them, and they're going to have to fight that.
Well, I mean, I think we could take, the denouement of the of LSU season has already come, right? I mean, Orgeron's fired. How do you get up for practice? Well, I'll play for pride. I'll play for, I'll play for recognition, sure, but Ed Orgeron led that team down a path of destruction after one season of glory, and we could spend a whole bunch of airtime talking about what Ed Orgeron, nobody else, look, LSU fans, LSU players, LSU boosters, none of this is your fault. All of it is LSU. All of it is Ed Orgeron's fault. I have never seen. I have seen coaches over the years from different teams lead teams to victory. I have never seen a coach actively lead his team to destruction the way Ed Orgeron did. It's kind of amazing. It's like breathtaking. It's like, you come out one morning.
On steroids?
Yeah. It's like you come out one morning and your neighbor has thoroughly demolished their brand new car with a sledgehammer. You just have to kind of step back and go, wow, that's amazing. Not in a good way, but that's amazing. And that's what went on at LSU. But we move on.
Yeah. And the thing about that, we have LSU coming up in 2 weeks. We're going to see a Jekyll and Hyde team, I think. They are going to be up to start that game.
I'm not worried about LSU. They might sting us on an opening drive, but honestly, they've got to come into Bryant Denny. I'm not concerned about LSU.
I'll tell you what I expect. They'll come out hot and emotional and fired up, and once that's gone, it's going to get really ugly, I think.
Yeah. And our crowd was a huge factor last night, too. I forgot to mention that. Our crowd was a huge factor, and LSU is going to have that in their ears all night long. So, again, sorry, Tigers. I'm not worried about y'all. Mississippi State What is there to say here? They played Vanderbilt, you know.
Yeah, well, they finally got a break in their schedule and they got their FCS cupcake to beat. Wait,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Oh, they're still in the SEC. Forgive me. I'm sorry.
I know.
But yeah, that was Vandy had 155 yards of total offense, and Mississippi State had more than double that just in passing. Of course, they don't run the ball, so they had something like 50 yards rushing. But yeah, that was a not a good game, and it was really not worth talking about. Vandy's just bad, terrible. We have two of the worst SEC teams that I've seen in a long time, and they played last week. You could have watched that on national television. And speaking of that one, Texas A&M beat South Carolina 44-16. Calzada threw for 187 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception. Where was that, Calzada? A couple of weeks ago, but they ran for 290 yards and had a 95-yard punt return for a touchdown. And they held South Kakalaki to under 200 yards of total offense. Oh, by the way, did you know that South Carolina's quarterback was a graduate assistant? Did anybody know that?
Yeah. There was some question if that was legal at the start of the year, but they got that cleared with Sankey like at the start of the year. It's really weird.
I did not know that. I haven't heard that 47,000 times since the beginning of the season.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, when you get the media guides from these places, it's like the same few facts over and over. Like it's so weird.
Yeah, you know, I want to wrap up the conference just because I have to mention this, but I do the hype and the data points thing. I want to touch on that a little bit if we've got time. But Arkansas 45, Pine Bluff 3. Now Jess knows, and I may have mentioned this. The APBU is my adopted team. And I missed the game. I didn't miss much. 45-3 beat down is I didn't miss much, but this is a down year for Pine Bluff. They're 1-6, 0-4 in the SWAC. So yeah, Arkansas. It was just a cupcake. And I would hesitate to even call it a cupcake game. It was like those store-bought Little Debbie snack cake game for Arkansas yesterday. I mean, they had 400 plus yards to just shy of 220 for APBU, and there's nothing to say. I'm not afraid of the bacon bits. It was just an up game for them against a team that was not equipped to play a 1A FBS team. But they got their moment on national TV, so good for them.
Yeah, they can blow out a team that doesn't have the same talent on the field, but they have problems with teams that have similar talent right now. They're going to have to bolster their talent to really compete in the SEC West, I think.
Agreed.
I have a new game for you, fellas, if you want to play.
I do want to play. Is this Big John Stock Tips? Are we there yet, Dad?
Yeah, well, we're going to play a little game called Buy or Sell. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my top 10. And we're going to go around the table, and you're going to tell me, are you buying this team at this slot, or are you selling this team at this slot? Are we ready?
All right.
It's going to be. We're going to start off easy.
We need
Number one.
Opener sound for this, the NYSC, bong bong bong, or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We'll
do that. We'll get it. I'll get Bo to square us up a soundboard, and we'll get the opening stock bell for that. I like that. We'll do that.
Ooh, I get a. Can I just go get a bell and ring it? That'll work too. All right, here we go, guys. Starting off, number one. Georgia. Tell me what you got. Are you buying or selling?
Buying Georgia.
I mean, look at their schedule. It is ridiculous. There's no reason to think that they should be anything but undefeated. You have Florida in the cocktail party, Missouri. Oh yeah, Missouri, who got blown out by Tennessee. then Tennessee. I'm curious to see how Georgia's defense does against an up-tempo offense. I mean, not to say that I think that'll be close, but that could be an easy win. Charleston Southern and then Tech in old-fashioned eight. They're going to win all of those.
So Jessica's buying Georgia too. I'm buying Georgia. How about you?
I'm buying Georgia. Obviously, I made the list, and Georgia right now is honestly the only obvious choice. Number 2, Alabama.
I'm buying. I'm
Yeah.
buying. I'm putting my commodities in Alabama.
Jeff?
I like Alabama's schedule too. I'm not a believer in what LSU has with their players dropping like flies at a crawfish boil. Then you have the Lobos. I mean, that's going to be, again, that's a cakewalk. Arkansas is who we thought they were. They faced a Texas team who was not back, and that wound up being, that's a good win that got Pittman and that fan base energized, but it's not much. And then the Auburn game. I'm not a believer in what Auburn has done this year. I like a lot of what they've called, but not how they've executed it. I think it's going to be Alabama, Georgia, the SEC game. I hope so.
So do you buy Alabama at number 2?
Yep.
All right. Well, number 3, Michigan.
Selling. Michigan's not there selling.
Yeah. I mean, no, I don't like what they have left, and I don't think they have much left in them. You have games against Michigan State, in Sparty, Indiana, who Indiana always has one surprise game a year, even though that's in the big house. Then you have Penn State. I mean, talk about two teams that perpetually disappoint. Someone's still got to win that, though. They'll beat the Terps, and then they have Ohio State, who is the Big Ten's equivalent of the Tennessee-Alabama rivalry. So
everybody's selling Michigan at number 3?
I'm selling.
Yeah,
Michigan.
yeah. I'm sorry. I'm getting my receipt, and I'm getting store credit for the khakis.
Okay.
Nice.
Fair enough. So I think I know what you're going to say about number 4, Ohio State.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest. I'm telling my broker to hold Ohio State till mid-November. I'm not doing anything with it. I'm not buying any more Ohio State. I'm not selling any Ohio State. I'm holding Ohio State. Get back to me after the 1st of November. It's radioactive. So I really can't buy Ohio State, but I can't bring myself to sell any Ohio State.
Jess, what do you think?
I'm going to buy on them. They've won their last 4 games now: 59-7, 52-13, 66-17, 54-7. They do have a tougher route than a lot of the people. Penn State, Purdue, Michigan State, Michigan. So many of their games are ranked. But I mean, who really scares you in this bunch? Nebraska's on the road. Michigan is on the road. I think they're harder. Their harder games are on the road. But Michigan State, Ohio State is maybe one that would concern me a little bit. And I think they do have less room to necessarily sink or swim. But right now, Henderson has just absolutely been lighting it up. Travian Henderson is, I think, probably the best true freshman wire to wire this year. Maybe Caleb Williams, eventually he would come out on top. But this team is looking absolutely dominant right now. CJ Stroud looks consistently good. I just don't see who stops them. I could see them being in a tight game in one of these. Maybe it's the game, but I'm buying right now.
Okay. So I'll tell you why I put Michigan and Ohio State the way I put them. I put Michigan above Ohio State because I saw what Oregon's run game did to Ohio State's defense. And I think Michigan's got a strong run game. So I think right now I can't get that Oregon Ohio State game out of my mind. I keep going back to it. And I think that's an advantage that Michigan's going to have over Ohio State. So that's why I have them. And that's why I buy Michigan at number 3 and Ohio State at number 4.
All right.
But let's move on. Number 5, Ole Miss.
Ole Miss is. I'll buy a little Ole Miss. I'm not sinking the bank account into Ole Miss. I'll buy a little Ole Miss cautiously, and advise to either hold or maybe sell a little.
Are you
I know
a
that's
hold for Ole
wishy-washy, but
Miss at number 5? Is that what I'm hearing?
I gotta stand on it. Hold Ole Miss.
What do you think, Jess?
So there's a term we have in stocks. It's called the straddle, and that means you would buy a certain amount and you would sell a certain amount and you would try to come out ahead in profits. And that's where I am right now. I think Auburn is not necessarily going to be an issue for them. They have way too strong an offense for that to be the case. Liberty will be fun for obvious reasons. Texas A&M, I think, is going to give them some issues, though. That's a very fun matchup that could easily derail what's been an incredible season for Matt Brown and Lane Kiffin. Eggball weren't concerned me neither with Vanderbilt, so they're going to finish off strong. But in their short game, they have, I don't think Auburn would trip them up, but it wouldn't surprise me to see it at the same time. So I'm slightly optimistic about them. So maybe it's more like a strangle rather than a straddle, which is more bullish. But I really like what I see out of them. I really do. I like how they've gone really a strong defensive scheme implemented, even though they don't have necessarily the strongest of talent to run it. So I would say slight buy, but buyer with caution. Not necessarily approved by the Better Business Bureau.
Buy with a question mark. That's what I'm putting in my notes. And that's Ole Miss at number 5. And by the way, they are something like number 12 or number 13 now. So I thought that might be a little bit of a stretch, but I looked at what was behind them, and I just couldn't see anybody beating them, including number 6, Cincinnati.
Cincinnati is a penny stock, and I am pulling $5,000 out of the account. I want all the Cincinnati we can buy. Inject it into my veins. The Bearcats are a definite buy for me.
Okay. Jess?
I mean, they're a treasury note, right? Like, there's no risk, but you won't get much in return.
Okay.
I mean, who are you trusting right now to be remotely respectable in a bowl game? Ain't going to be Tulsa. Ain't going to be South Florida. Ain't going to be East Carolina. Ain't going to be Tulane. Maybe SMU. I mean, the Mustangs actually play an odd part in how much I value Cincinnati going forward. Because the game in South Bend was a very good reputation win, and I expect Cincinnati probably to win out. But the question is how much it's of worth and how much you're going to get on the return. That's why I made the treasury return thing. Because, yeah, there's like no chance it defaults, but you're not going to get much value in return. The schedule really isn't worth that much, even if SMU stays afloat like they are. Like, maybe they're a top 20 team in the absolute best case of scenarios.
So do you buy Cincinnati at number 6?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, keep an eye on SMU. It's weird because Cincinnati, I don't think it's going to necessarily control what they're worth. The other teams will. They'll win the games, but the question is where you buy them at.
I will tell you that number 5 through about number 8, I looked at it and shuffled it several times, and then I had to sit there and do this mental exercise where they played each other, and I just could not see Cincinnati beating Ole Miss. So I have to rank Ole Miss higher, and that puts Cincinnati at number 6. And I also compared Ole Miss and Cincinnati to number 7, Oklahoma.
Sell. I'm sorry, they're not as
even at number 7.
Even at number 7, sell. Okay. I can invest what I make from an Oklahoma sale right now in much more better and fun stuff.
All right, what do you think, Jess?
All right. The question to me is, when are they going to start letting teams hang around? This has been an issue all year for them. One of these times it's going to bite them, right? Like, I mean, Baylor is kind of having a quiet year. Roping Texas Tech. Iowa State has a very good chance to do that. Purdy and Bree season is back. They had that nice win that was kind of expected over Okie Light. Maybe it's Bedlam this year for once. But I feel like this team is due to blow a game. It's Oklahoma. They've not been 8-0 since 2004. Caleb Williams has been incredible. Not even just as a true freshman, but like overall. I mean, incredible there. But there's only so much you can do when you're letting teams like Kansas hang around in games and you win the game because of, I mean, I think it was a correct call, but a very, very technical call that basically set that up. If you're doing this consistently, I get it if it's one time. That's the nature of the game. There's going to be variability baked in. But when you're seeing stuff like this, I have to question how long that's going to last. This team will blow one, and it's going to be an ugly game. They're going to have to eventually allow a late score late that impacts the game. You would think. Like, think about all the games this happened. This happened with Tulane to start the year, even when they had Spencer Rattler starting. I don't buy this team at all.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Oklahoma's already blown one game, but Texas blew even harder. So, what do you do? And you know what? I'm second guessing where they are at this point because they might need to be ranked below my number 8, which is Michigan State.
Hold or straddle. I don't know about Michigan State. I don't want to buy any more Michigan State. I would rather plow another couple of grand into the Cincinnati penny stock and then shore up Georgia, Alabama with the rest than spend any money on Michigan State. I hold, but leaning towards straddle.
All right, Jess?
All right, so this is a company who shares, who have been really liquidated. The CEO decided to release a lot of treasury stock, and it's been devalued. You want to talk about, Bama ain't played nobody, Paul, but who the hell have they played? Northwestern, Youngstown, Miami? Miami's not been that great this year. Nebraska in overtime, Western Kentucky, Rutgers, Indiana. These guys have a backloaded schedule. Like, honestly, I've seen Mexican food that's given me less out the back than this Michigan State schedule. I don't buy it. Like, they have a great defense, don't get me wrong, but I question who they've played. They've not looked especially dominant in anything. Their biggest win has been by 21 over Miami. Or, no, excuse me, they had a little more over Youngstown. We're not going to count Youngstown. They consistently have not been anything excellent to me in terms of who they've played, and the results have really not displayed that they've been all that great either. How are they going to do against, really, everyone but Maryland is ranked on their schedule the rest of the way? And you start with Michigan immediately. You're going to have Ohio State in your penultimate game. I don't see how this goes anywhere good, and the wheels could fall off really fast for this team.
I don't disagree, and I think November is going to, for the Big Ten, November is going to be a big month, and we're about to find out what they're really about. But one of my top 4 has already lost to number 9, Oregon. I will be honest with this, guys. After the back end of this, I had a hard time because I couldn't figure out who to put there because I don't know that there's a big gap between the top 4 and everybody else. It got tough.
Oregon, sell most of it, but hang on to a little bit. That's not a straddle. That's me literally like keeping a couple in my pocket. I'm gonna say mostly sell Oregon. I don't feel like Oregon is all there. And I don't think it's. I think your funds are better spent in other places. So I'm going to say sell most of Oregon.
Fair enough. What do you think, Jess?
I don't buy it much, honestly. Like California was a 7-point win. UCLA 3-point win. These guys are playing teams close. They probably do have the country's best win right now over Ohio State of possible contenders. But I just think these guys let inferior teams hang around too long. The Stanford loss is not even a good loss. I don't think this is a team that's going to be able to continue going forward. Yeah, they probably have a pretty weak schedule going forward, honestly, because there's nobody I'm really trusting between Buffalo, Washington, Wazoo, Utah, Oregon State in this group. But that doesn't mean that they're especially great either. They'll get it probably a New Year's Six bowl. They'll probably be they'll probably be a good representative for that. But I think they're very capped about what they can be. This is not a playoff team. I mean, they're probably going to be a top 10 team at the end of it just because of who they play, and they're a power conference as much as the Pac-12 can be considered that now. So I don't buy them where they stand, but I don't think they're just going to drop all that much more just because of the simplicity. So they'll probably hold serve. They're going to be the equivalent of Walmart stock. It never ever moves.
Yeah, and like I said, it's getting tougher as you get closer to 10, because I had a hard time finding teams to put there, and I will be honest, I almost put Wake Forest at number 10. Then I went and reviewed who they've played so far, and I can't put them there. So I had to go and put number 10 Notre Dame.
Looking at the broadsheets, Notre Dame is a shell corporation that fronts a Ponzi scheme. Not only
I think that's fair.
Not only would I sell Notre Dame if I had it, I would not buy. Notre Dame is toxic. It is a waste of your funds.
Are you shorting Notre Dame?
I am shorting Notre Dame. That I right now live on the air. I'm going full full financial madman, and I short Notre Dame.
Yeah. What do you think, Jess?
Yeah, I don't buy into them. I think their best win was really Wisconsin, which was more a fourth quarter dominance. They got pumped up by jump around in Soldier Field. No, I mean, if they had the Cincinnati win, I think you could legitimately look at them as something interesting. Even if they play close, that probably would be enough for the committee. But, you couldn't be probably what was your best schedule item. And right now you probably have an easy schedule. Like you have Navy, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Stanford. They probably will win out. And again, they'll probably get a good bowl game. But they're not nearly as good as really their record would indicate or anything like that. I mean, really, what is their situation with their passing? It seems like they still cannot decide what they want to be. And they don't have an identity. They don't have an Ian book to really anchor them, to really turn the page and move on to the next chapter at this point. So I sell them because I think this team is not as good as it looks. Again, they'll probably win out, but it won't be pretty, as has really been the case for most of the year, right? Like, I mean, they let Toledo hang around. They let Florida State hang around. I mean, against Mackenzie Milton, who's looked terrible in every other game he's played this year. So, yeah.
I understand your sells. I just honestly, once I started looking at the teams, I couldn't find anybody else to put up there. I really couldn't. This is one of those weird years, and the truth about it is, number one this year is inconsistency. That should be number one. Inconsistent state. Except for maybe Georgia. And they even had the game where they couldn't score against Clemson. So this is just going to be one of those weird years, and I think November is going to be wild and crazy. And we may see our first two-loss team in the playoffs this year.
Yep, I agree with that. I want to see what Tennessee's offense does against Georgia. That is going to be a really good measuring stick, because I'm not convinced that Georgia's played anyone legitimately offensively. I'm not saying that Georgia's a bad defense or anything. They're an excellent defense. But how do they really compare against, a good team like that? Like, I'm not saying Tennessee's a great team all around, but their offense is very good. And it could be more nationally recognized as much, honestly. Hate to say it, but it's true.
I think if Tennessee can get to the edge and test their back end, they have a chance to make it a close game. Tennessee's defense is pretty good. Their offense, we made them look bad except for a few plays. But like I said, if they could test their back end, Georgia, their back end really hasn't been tested this year. I want to see how that turns out.
Yeah, the
But
K-Bay's finger snapping goal right there. If you know, you
mm,
know.
but guys, that is buy sell, and thank you for playing.
Market
Uh,
is closed.
Yes.
we'll see who wins this game, but we can't tell this week. We'll have to revisit that later.
Right on. Good session there. There's your football stock tips, guys, and that's a lot of fun. So looking around at the top 25 this week, oh man, to quote the digital fox, chaos reigns.
Shall I?
Chaos reigns. Please.
All right. Well, Cincinnati squeaked by Navy, 27-20. Mighty Navy. Navy scored a touchdown with under a minute left, and then recovered the onside kick, and that spells danger. But Navy is a triple option team, and they don't do well coming from behind late. So defensive back Arquan Bush intercepted a Navy pass with 25 seconds left to play to seal that victory. But that is an uncomfortably close win for somebody who is ranked number 2 in the AP.
Like I said, they're a penny stock. And if I can interject real quick, my buddy Rusty, who's the big man who's gotten me excited about Cincy. I told him a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the rest of Cincy's schedule, and I said watch out for Navy, and he said Navy. I think that they were either winless or only had one win at that point. I was like, dude, don't sleep on Navy. And after this game, I said, I told you so. I told you so. Which is why it goes back to buy, sell, hold.
Yeah.
I put Cincy as I want all the Cincy I can buy, but they're still a penny stock right now. Or maybe a dollar stock. But anyway, I'm sorry. Please continue.
No, that's triple option. If you don't see it, but once a year, that they will give you fits, and you have to have a good week of it's mental as much as anything. And they're gonna they've got a good quarterback running the option, he's gonna make you look bad more often than not. He's gonna make you wrong no matter what you do. That's the thing about the triple option. But Cincinnati should have enough horses to stop it. Oklahoma beat Kansas 35-23, but I'll tell you what, they had to convert a fourth down with some kind of weird backyard play where the quarterback took the ball from the running back to get a first down with under 4 minutes left, and then they scored a late touchdown to make it look worse than it was. They almost got beat, because if Kansas had gotten the ball back, they probably were going to score on this defense. So Oklahoma, number 3, you can't be squeaking by Kansas with plays like that. You got to put them away early. Guys, did anybody else see that game?
Yeah, I did, and I caught a little bit of bitching about that handoff. Oh, it's a handoff, guys. It's completely legal. Why are you complaining? It's not a pass. It's a handoff. So
yeah, that was a legal play. I mean, it was an ugly play, and it was a sloppy play, and it was something from the backyard, but it was perfectly legal play.
Yeah, because if they let him gain a yard at that point, or let him gain even a few inches, it would be legal because the forward progress would have been the case. Or if it had been initially a pass, everything has to be precise for that to be working. But no, completely the right call. Because it was made backwards behind the line of scrimmage. It's so weird.
Yeah, I mean they could have called the running back down because of his forward progress had definitely been stopped. He was being moved backwards, but that's not reviewable. So that's a judgment call. So you couldn't have reviewed that and said this forward progress stopped the plays dead. So perfectly legal play. Just you shouldn't have to make a play like that to beat Kansas. But we'll move on to Ohio State, Indiana. Ohio State had no trouble with the Hoosiers, as in Hoosier quarterback, beating them 54-7.
Yeah.
Indiana was forced to play 3 backup quarterbacks as starting quarterback Michael Penix Jr. was limp on the sidelines for the second straight week. Um, and the Buckeyes had 539 yards of offense to Indiana's 128.
Ooh.
So Indiana's got to get their quarterback back, or they're in trouble because they don't really have anybody behind them right now. But I, Ohio State is looking dangerous now. But you know what? I still don't know if they've got their run defense fixed, because I don't think they've played anybody that can challenge that again.
Yeah. Very mad on Ohio State.
I think Purdue. Do they play Purdue? I think they do.
Which
Go
team?
Does it Ohio State play Purdue?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry guys. If they do, Purdue's going to be a challenge because they've got a good running game. Michigan, and this is again why I put Michigan ahead of Ohio State, because I think they have a strong running game, and I think that's Ohio State's weakness. We'll see. November's going to be fun. Michigan handled mighty Northwestern 33-7. They had two players go over 100 yards rushing. They had Blake Corum with 19 rushes for 119 yards, and Hassan Haskins had 110 yards. Total of 294 yards rushing. So strong run game. That's going to be that's keeping them in a lot of games. They also had 23 of 32 passing for 165 yards. So the question is, Michigan's run game versus Ohio State's run defense. If they can stop that run game, they will beat them. If they can't, they won't win. Any thoughts on Michigan Northwestern, or Michigan in general here?
Other than I apparently don't know how to spell Northwestern, looking at the ticker, no, I have no strong feelings either way.
Okay. Michigan, I mean, they've gone, they're not trying to be the big spread passing team. They're not trying to make the quarterback win the games. They're running ball and playing defense right now. They're kind of going throwback a little bit. And
I think Michigan's going to have to get Cade McNamara more involved. He's only 20 out of 27 for 129. This past week, Spartans defense, again, as I mentioned, is incredible. They only allow 3.3 yards per carry. But next week it's going to be fun, though. It is the first time since 1964 that Michigan State have met as top 10 teams on both sides.
Well, let me ask you, who do you have, Michigan or Michigan State?
I would trust Michigan and Harbaugh only because I think an offense is going to be more key to sustainability of success. Because if you pick, I think it'll be close, but if you take one side, as dominant as their defense is, if you had to pick one side to win a battle or a drive right now, like what the drive for your life, you're going to pick offense or defense. I'm going to pick offense just because I think it's more favorable to do so now. I think it'll be ugly. I think it'll be Big Ten football, but I would take Michigan.
Okay, yeah, I think I've got Michigan, but I think it's going to be a touchdown or less.
Oh, yeah.
So, moving on. Penn State, Illinois. The Nittany Lions down the Illini by 20-18 in 9 overtimes.
And the under was still hit.
What's that?
And they still hit the under in 9 overtimes.
Yeah, you see 9 overtimes, then you see 20-18, and you think, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
So let me tell you what happened. They were tied at 10 at the end of regulation, and both teams kicked field goals in the first 2 overtimes, 16-16 after 2 overtimes. Then nobody scored again. They remember, starting with the 3rd overtime, you're doing 2-point plays, and that's it. 1 play from the 3. Nobody scored again for the next 4, 5 overtimes until overtime number 8. Then they both converted on their 2-point conversions. Then uh, Penn State on the first. No, then Penn State didn't score, and Illinois did, and 20-18. If you see and this is the first 9 overtime game in NCAA history. You see that you're expecting to see scores in the 60s and 70s, not 20-18. And I'm sorry, guys, I cannot call this a defensive masterpiece. This is bad offense.
All right. No question. No question.
Well, I'm just glad they didn't get to 10 overtimes because it's an obscure NCAA rule, but at 10 overtimes, all of the players' chakras are unlocked, and they then have to go into a mind war overtime. So, I don't know. That was a lot funnier in my head than it was spoken. But anyway,
I was hoping for you would throw one guy out there and it's a battle to the death at midfield. That's what I want to see after.
Like at 10 overtimes they get baseball bats. At 11 overtimes they get spike clubs. At 12 they get knives. At 13 they get guns, and then at 14 they get to call in artillery.
And they get the SWAT team too.
Yeah, exactly.
So this set up I believe this set up a college sports record for most overtimes too, because most I can recall in basketball was 7 from Cincinnati and Bradley in 1981. So a lot of people didn't talk about that. They said, "Oh, it's a football record," which it is, of course, but I think it's a college sports record, which is real damning. Because hockey's only 5, I believe. So,
but now with that said, I mean, it sounds pretty earth-shaking that it's 9 overtimes. That's like 30 minutes of football. We're not talking about overtimes like the NFL used to have, where they would play another quarter of football. Can you imagine if it was like that? We'd still be watching that game. We'd still be watching that game. It'd still be going on.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is, you think those guys are worn out, but starting in third overtime, you're running a play, waiting a couple of minutes, running a play, waiting a couple of minutes, and I bet it. And I didn't get to catch that. I caught the highlights, but I didn't get to catch the flow of the game. But I'm pretty sure the game really slowed down. Starting with overtime number 3.
Oh yeah, Penn State is elected to defend on this side. Like, oh my gosh, it was. Last year we used to hear for Aina Smith, number 19 is wearing number 00, like consistently for that last year. That was the equivalent of hearing which defensive side that teams were going to pick during the overtimes. It was unbelievable.
And I hate Penn State, and I'm glad they lost. I just want to interject that. I hate Penn State. I don't care if Penn State loses 0-1, and the 1 point is a deliberate safety by the other team. I hate Penn State.
Have we ever talked this much about a game that was 10-10 at the end of regulation?
No. I think
there's a reason we don't do that. Well, let's move on to Oklahoma State to Iowa State. The Iowa State Cyclones blew away the Cowboys' chance at a perfect season by beating them 24-21.
You've been waiting all morning to make that pun, haven't you?
Nobody said a word about my Penix limping joke, so I got to have something.
All right.
So anyway, the Cyclones were up 17-14 until Oklahoma State quarterback Spencer Sanders threw a 25-yard touchdown to Tay Martin with about 8.5 minutes left in the game. But Iowa State just drove right down the field and went 85 yards in 6 plays to take the lead, and then they stopped Oklahoma State twice in the fourth quarter. Brock Purdy, he threw for 370 yards and 2 touchdowns for Iowa State. Iowa State, they are tied with Baylor and Oklahoma State for number 2 in the Big 12. So it looks like right now those 3 are in the driver's seat to make the championship game. Yeah, I'm not buying Oklahoma State or Iowa State, and I don't have enough on Baylor right now. But I don't know who's going to make that championship game. Iowa State's not really. They're more of a spoiler to me. I just don't see them going undefeated, but they will beat somebody they shouldn't beat. But I don't think they're going to be consistent enough to run the table to make the championship game.
No.
Oklahoma plays Baylor, and of course they play Oklahoma State in Bedlam. I think it has a good chance to beat Iowa. I think it has a decent chance to beat Iowa State just because of how the schedule shakes out.
And yeah, Oklahoma still has to play all three of those teams, right?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Yeah,
and that's the thing. None of those three teams are great teams, I don't think, but all three of them have a very good chance of beating Oklahoma.
Yeah. It's such a weird conference this year. Like, I mean, even more than usual Big 12.
Yeah. So I don't know that we would call that great football, but I think it'll be entertaining football.
Yeah, it's kind of like the opposite of Big Ten football. Big Ten football is boring, but when it is at its top, when like you have a good Penn State or you have a good Iowa against a very good Ohio State, it might not be the most entertaining to watch, but it's fundamentally solid. Big 12 is almost never fundamentally solid, but it's entertaining to watch. It's just reverse.
Yeah. I can't disagree with that. And I am, speaking of Big Ten, I'm going to hand off to you for the next segment of this. Go ahead.
All right. So in my segment, we're doing 9 to 6, Sweet 16. So that means we got to start with, Oregon, because number 9 is off. So Oregon against UCLA. Oregon stuck out to me because Thibodeau was back, and then UCLA tried to stick a tight end on him. That didn't end so well. I am surprised that where Oregon is ranked right now because of the quality of the loss. It just seems odd to me. I think it's interesting that you had 2 top 10 teams this week by Vegas lines that were not favored to win. Obviously, Iowa State's the one that did win, and they pulled the upset off. But, Oregon actually did one as an underdog as a top 10 against an unranked, which is weird. But, I don't know. Like, Oregon had a good day. They let them hang around. But, that was kind of expected. So it's weird to say, but Pac-12 actually did what was kind of expected instead of really underwhelming. I mean, he won Thibodeau, though. 9 tackles. 4.5 tackles for losses, 2 sacked and a forced fumble. He's fully healthy. I think the team looked more like they did against Ohio State than the one that lost to Stanford and almost didn't survive Cal. Anthony Brown, I think, is a little bit too mistake prone. Like his late pick that easily could have given the Bruins the win. Maybe there's a chance they can beat for the playoffs, but I don't know. But we're going to see. I mean, that's interesting, certainly. Ole Miss was just dominant throughout this game. Snoop Connor on outside zone all day. Like, it was a beautiful thing to see. LSU had really no answers. But you know what kind of was a surprising story about this? I mean, Nussmeier's kid getting in the game. And actually had some really, really nice throws and really good placement early on. And I was surprised he just didn't hand off the ball off more, if you know what I mean. But that was encouraging there. Notre Dame was doing Notre Dame things. I mean, Juke Shalele, good for them. They got the trophy. But, I mean, this is kind of a listless Southern California team. Not really too much to say about that too much. But, I mean, they're just trudging on. This is an okay team that's going to cusp around the top 10. Didn't really stick out to me as anything all that spectacular. Got out to an early lead. Let the Trojans get back in the game for a little bit. And, again, kind of according to script. Wasn't according to script. Wake Forest and Army. A basketball score of 70-56. Wake Forest is now undefeated this far in the year since 1944. Army had 3 passing touchdowns. Wake Forest is a mirage. I'm sorry. Like, what is this? You're allowing 56 points to the Army? Like, I mean, I'm glad their offense was able to step it up, but, like, I just don't see enough from anything like this. I just don't see how in the world that it's possible that this team is going to go undefeated and even beat Pitt, right? Because Pitt looks respectable, honestly. But this team is just a mirage. They were doing it with eking things out. They were playing to the level of your opponents, and really in a weak conference too. I don't see, I don't see how this continues. But they win in a week in a conference that maybe it's possible to continue, but the underlying stats don't support them whatsoever.
As long as they beat Clemson, I don't care who else
Yeah,
they beat.
yeah. Please beat Clemson. Yeah, just make those guys bowl and eligible. I would love to see it. They have my full support for that. Good people, but no. Like, what a wild game that was, though. Right? Like, when's the last time that Army had 3 touchdown passes? I mean, that's uncommon. Like, I mean, good for Laws, right? I mean, I'm going to look up right now to see the last time they had 3 touchdown passes because I feel like it's not common. Just give me just a second here. It's on the spot research. Just, I don't feel like it's that common. So give me a second here. Sorry to keep you all waiting here, but this will be real quick.
Oh, all right. Is it over to me or?
In just a second.
Oh, okay.
All right, yeah. Okay. So the last time they had 3 touchdown passes was against Lafayette on October 15th of 2016. It is only the 8th time that they've had 3 touchdown passes or more, because they had 4 against Houston in 2002, but 8th in this century. Yeah, let that sink in. And they've lost all but one of them, and the one was the Lafayette game. So really strange, right? Go figure. But yeah, that is a wild week in the mid ranges. In the Sweet 16, we handed over to 16 going on 17 with Mr. Bill.
All righty. Texas A&M beat the Cox. Sorry. 44-14. A&M's resurgence. If this A&M had been there at the beginning of the season, we'd be looking at a very, very different SEC. I feel like A&M is, and I don't like saying good things about A&M. Understand this is not coming from a place of admiration. A&M is kind of like Alabama in that they are trying to find an identity still. They're just not doing as good a job of it. But watch out for A&M. They could wreck shit. A&M could come in and spoil some stuff. South Carolina,
They beat Vandy by 1. What? There's nothing you can expect out of them.
Yeah, like I said, they can be a spoiler. And speaking of teams with identity problems, so NC State fell to Miami. I don't know if I don't know if Miami's coach wants to sell me a condo or a premium new Lexus SUV. I can't figure Miami out. Do they want to be a bad team? Do they want to be a good team? What is even happening in South Florida? But anyway, they squeaked past NC State 31-30. Manny, I don't think you're out of the hot seat yet, bud. I'm sorry. Auburn had a bye. Baylor had a bye. SMU rolled over Tulane, 55-26. Good on you, SMU, I guess. I didn't see anything particularly earth-shaking there. I mean, it's, apparently when Tulane left, they didn't take any deer antler spray samples with them. So, number 22, San Diego State 20, Air Force 14. Again, not much to say. It was a squeaker for San Diego State. They'll probably get, the Arizona upstairs vacuum cleaner technology school bowl nod come bowl season. But I've been kind of leaping over these and just touching on them slightly because I really wanted to get to this. Number 23, Pittsburgh, 27, Clemson, 17. I'm always happy when Clemson loses. and Clemson lost, and Clemson has continued to lose. The little aberration, the little blip on the football radar that lasted from 2015 to now, I think has finally faded off the screen. Clemson, it was fun while it lasted. Don't call us. We won't call you. So 27-17 Clemson. What can you say about Eddie Deason, guys? The fighting Dabos. Auburn with a lake. They have faded into the sunset. Now, everybody and their brother has gotten 5 minutes of bandwidth to say, is Nick Saban's dynasty over every time, somebody on Alabama catches a head cold. But with Clemson, I'm not seeing a quick bounce back for the fighting Dabos over there. The UTSA Roadrunners, 42, Louisiana Tech 16, big meh from me. And finally, Purdue, who for purely emotional reasons I like to see win, fell to Wisconsin 13-30. So that finishes up the slush pile for me. Unless anybody has any comments.
I knew Wisconsin was better than how they started. They're going to end up playing the role of spoiler, and they're going to beat some people late in the season, I think. And Purdue was overrated at 25. And Clemson losing. Okay, that's a good day.
Yeah. Yeah, just don't seek any athletic department dollars into expanding your trophy case there, Dabo. So there's your top 25, folks. With all the news and views that's fit to print. What do you guys think about the well, obviously it's not next week. We have a bye finally. Alabama can stop and catch their breaths after a tumultuous season. But we've got some company coming over in the first week in the second week. What are you guys feeling like as we're facing down the back end of the season here?
I think the bye week's coming at a good time. It's going to give our chance. We're going to get some guys healthy and back on the field in a couple of weeks, and this is going to give us a chance to clean up some minor issues that cause major plays. And I think as long as the guys keep working, we're set to run the table. But we have to keep working. And I think against LSU, I think it's going to be close for about a drive. And I think LSU is going to pack it in when they get punched in the mouth, because that's what they tend to do these days.
Yeah, I like that kind of, and I agree with you too. I think it's going to be a microcosm of Ed Ogeron's career. A little bit slow maybe to start on like the first few plays, but then eventually they hit with a big boom, which is 2019, and they sizzle and they don't go with a bang but a whimper, essentially. And that's how the game's going to go. I don't see how they have really any answers anywhere. I mean, Emory's kind of a nice piece, certainly, but they don't have consistency. They don't have the players. They definitely don't have the schemes to really match up with what Alabama provides all the way around. I think this is going to be a very good test to see how well they can focus on an opponent that they should beat, basically in every positional group. But you still have to respect them a little bit as an SEC team, certainly, even if you should be favored enough. But just have enough focus, knowing your assignments, knowing your communications. Hopefully there's some nice little hangouts this weekend where they get to know each other a little bit more, especially in the secondary. But, yeah, it's favorable.
Yeah, and Johnson over at LSU, he's no match for Bryce. I want LSU to just suffer the ignominy of having their heads handed to them in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I have got a hate on for LSU, specifically for Ed O. I mean, from a sports standpoint, I said for all of last season, and I said for all of this season, that LSU was suffering from a soul sickness, that there was something rotten in LSU, and we have seen every fan has now seen the articles and watched the news reports, and we know just how soul sick LSU actually was. Okay, it's proven. From an X's and O's standpoint, they're just not packing the heat. They don't have the leadership on the sideline. What do you do? I mean, what do you do? How do you get your team excited? All right, guys, let's go out and win this one for some reason. I don't know. I'm not going to be here. It's just. I mean, play for pride. Play for a look from the NFL. I mean, just.
I have some motivation for them. They can play for a bowl game, and hopefully they can get in, and they can play Indiana, so we can have Johnson quarterbacking against Penix.
Oh God, that's another one we waited all morning for.
I'm sorry. I apologize to our listeners for making these jokes. I don't apologize. They're funny.
Apologize to the listeners. Hell, you owe us an apology on the show. Unscripted, really. Folks. That's what you get here. Anyway, so no, I feel like LSU will sting us, and we'll hold our collective breaths, and we'll all post horrible, nasty things on Twitter and in Discord and on the RBR forums, and then I'm predicting 44-14.
I think it could be a little bit higher than that on both sides. I think the offense is really humming especially well. I think LSU could get like a garbage time score. Like I could see a score honestly similar to this week. It wouldn't surprise me. But I think we'd have a more positive outlook in terms of the defense had some very bad plays, even if it was isolated. I don't think they're going to have those kinds of plays. I think if anything, you're just going to see like a methodical drive or two for LSU, and then that leads to a score, and then a garbage time one that nobody thinks anything of except, oh no, our development curve for 2023. But freshman. So.
If Alabama has a good week of preparation in their focus, it's going to be something like 52-6, because I don't think our offense is starting to hit its stride. Our defense is starting to hit its stride. Our offense is just very methodical, and all we need are a couple of explosive plays, and we'll just drive it the rest of the game.
Defense is getting healthier too. Like Sanders coming back is going to be massive.
Yes, absolutely. And as long as they don't make the mental mistakes, I do not see LSU competing offensively, and I just don't see where the points are going to come from. They're not going to get those points from the air. And I think right now that our run defense is strong. So I'm thinking 52-6.
A bold prediction, sir, and I hope you're right. I don't want a shootout. I want a beat down. I want a savaging. I want LSU to cry uncle by the middle of the third quarter. But I don't think it will quite be 52-6. Now, I think if Nick starts to run wild, I don't think he's going to call the dogs off. All right, those comments made by Ed O. I know he has said before he thinks he's a good coach, but honestly, there's very little respectable about Ed O, and I don't think that respecting his Twilight games there are worthy of us not just hanging 50, 55, 60 on him if we can.
So you're saying that the chances of him joining the coach's rehab program are pretty low at this point?
Yeah, there's some stuff that's just too toxic.
My hot take for this game is that we see Nussmeier before Dixieland Delight.
Yeah, I'll see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Okeron's best strength, and I do give him credit for this because a lot of people won't do it. He knows how to surround himself with people who are more talented in his deficiencies than he is. A lot of people want to know where they know that they're not great at. I got to give him credit for that, and only that. He's not a very good schemer himself, and that's why he does that. No, he's not a very good coach, but that is a good leadership skill, admittedly, like genuinely. But because his cupboard is so bare now, right? Like Dave Miranda's in Baylor, Joe Brady is in Carolina. This is what he's got to work with now. So, no, right? He's being exposed for what he is and what his skills are as an individual. They're not great.
They're not. I know it goes against the process to say this, but just looking down the barrel of the last 3 games, NSMU is a fait accompli. That's barely merits talking about. We're going to have fun talking about it just from a, hey, wow, we came out and blew them away standpoint, I know. But Arkansas and Auburn. Arkansas could be tricky. Auburn, I'm genuinely worried about. Because it is in Jordan-Hare. And we know what goes on when we play in Jordan-Hare.
You mean shenanigans? Yeah.
Yeah.
The Auburn game is the one that scares me out of what we've got left. And it's not because I think they're a great team. I think they're a good team. But they always seem to play Alabama. They give Alabama Auburn's best game at Jordan-Hare. They tend to play a little above their heads. And Alabama tends to, struggle a little bit. I don't know. They'll seem to be a little more inconsistent at Jordan-Hare.
Well, we shall see. Any thoughts looking down the line, Jess?
No, honestly, I like to only look at the game in front of you right now. And that's one that you have to feel very favorable about. Not to say that the work shouldn't be done for it, but you have to feel confident about what the schedule is. Certainly, I think the rest of the way. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect the way you have in front of you. But I think when you see what Anderson is going to have opened up when more injuries come as a result, I think that is where you win.
Right on. So, I think that just about wraps us up for the day. We did not have a guest on the trivia, so I will throw this back out there again. And the rules of the trivia are, to get the trivia shout out, if you post in the comments after the video before the next show, and I think we will have a bye week show. There's still college football going on outside of Alabama. But if you post in the comments the answer to the trivia question before the next show, even if you didn't guess live on air, you still get the shout out. So, the trivia question this week. Starting and ending years, the longest streak of victories over Tennessee prior to the current run. When did it start? When did it end? Just saying the coach or the number of games doesn't count. What year did it start and what year did it end? That is the trivia question this week. Thus far, we do not have a guess for it. But there's still the outro and so on and et cetera to guess that. No fair Googling. So if you're out there and you wanna fire off a guess, go ahead and do that. Any final thoughts? Anyone at all?
Let's win the bye week.
Dude, we never win the bye week. We have never won on the bye week. Bye week is a trap game. You know that. Jez?
Well, let's go into it with the strong point, and let's see what we got. I feel good feelings about what's going to happen here. And, hey, it's going to be a pretty good bye week. I always feel bad that there's no Alabama football this week, But what can you do? I mean, it's no stress, but also no joy. It's kind of like first circle hell right there. It's kind of like being in the middle. But I'm going to enjoy it nonetheless. So college football. Looking forward to it, y'all.
All right, go college football. Thank you, everyone, for listening this morning. It was an absolute joy to be here. Roll Damn Tide. And we'll see you all next time. Have a good one.
I hate Tennessee because, first of all, it's Tennessee. And I just hate them because they low down, they dirty, they some snitches. And I hate Philip-Farmer. I hate their colors. I'm not a dog person. I just hate Tennessee, man. Like, and I hate Neyland Stadium. It looks like a garbage truck worker convention. And I hate all their quarterbacks. I hate Tennessee, man.
Describe what you feel about their colors too. I thought that was interesting.
It reminds me, and it's not that orange that you can stand. See, I hate Tennessee more than I hate Auburn. I just dislike Auburn. I hate Tennessee. See, Tennessee's colors is that throw up orange. It's not that orange that you can sit with. It's that puke inside of a pumpkin orange. And I don't like pumpkins. So I really don't like Tennessee, man. I can't stress that enough, man. And they losers. They sore losers because they're not Alabama, and I hate Tennessee, man.
That was beautiful, man. Probably the best interview I've done all year. Thank you, man.
True, man. I can't stress that enough. I hate them.
This is the Houndstooth Podcast. Real talk from real fans. We gump to a standard around here. Recapping the Alabama Crimson Tide and college football from around the SEC and across the nation. This is the Houndstooth Podcast. And here are your hosts, Bill Sylvie, Jessica Brand, John Henry, and Bo Ganora.